Good morning. Okay. All right. Henry's going to lead us in prayer in just a minute. What things do we need to remember in prayer today? Need to continue to pray for Russ. Looks like his recovery is doing well from his surgery, so need to include him in our prayers. Is Alan, I think I saw him earlier today. He's not traveling.
No,
but he did have safe travels. He did travel this week, didn't he?
no, last weekend.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Any other prayer requests today? Carol?
Jim's out of town. We're going to go to the farm and get some people to take care of things. And pray that Jim has a safe return back and maybe get here in time for service.
Oh, okay. So need to pray for Jim Ratliff. He's traveling, that he has a safe journey. I'd like you to pray for me today, Henry. This lesson is a tough lesson. I'm going to do my best with it, but it'll be challenging. Covering for Clay today. Any other prayer requests? Okay.
Let us pray. Dear Lord in heaven, we thank you for this most wonderful day. Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity of meeting here with our families. Thank you, Lord, for Frank as he leads us through this study of Revelation. We pray, Lord, that he will remember what he has studied and that he will explain it to us in a way that we can understand. Thank you, Lord, for Russ Rogers, that his surgery went well and he continues to improve. We also pray for Jim Ratcliffe as he travels. We hope and pray, Lord, that he has a safe journey. We pray, Lord, for this country. We pray, Lord, for the leadership of our country. And we pray, Lord, that they will seek guidance from you before making any decisions, and all decisions be in accordance to your will. We pray now that we will continue to learn from you, and we seek your counsel. And we know, Lord, that we cannot do nothing without your leadership. Help us to all realize that. And we ask all this in your Son's most precious name. Amen.
Thank you, Henry. Appreciate that. Hey, Anita. Good to see you today. So today we're going to be studying about Revelation chapters 13 and 14. And the assumption is that you've read the chapters in preparation for the lesson. I hope that's true, because that will really help if you've done that. Minor review. What is Revelation about? Jesus, absolutely. And there are some general themes in Revelation that stand out. Can you think of any of those themes? For example, who was it written to? 7 churches of Asia. That's right. That's the one that's called out specifically, in each church in detail kind of spoken to. Are there any generalized themes? Like, for example, who's the victor?
God wins.
God wins, absolutely. And so you're talking to Christians during a time of what's happening to the Christians? Persecution. Persecution, that's right. And so the image of victory at the end of what they're suffering is very important to them, right? Those are general key themes that are revealed multiple times through Revelation, different places. Now, as we look at the beginning of Revelation chapter 13, we see something rising out of the sea. What do we see rising out of the sea? A beast. And it has some of these numbers that we've talked about at different times. It has 10 horns. What is 10? Sorry? Complete? Usually that's 7. 7 is completeness.
Well, I had written down 7 perfect unity, but then I had written down 10 reference to a complete union.
Okay. All right. So I might be mistaken.
Well, I'm asking, did I write that down wrong?
I didn't write anything specific on my notes, so I might be wrong about that. You got complete on yours too? Okay. All right. I stand corrected. That's one version of complete. One that I heard that was complete that he went through was 4 for the earth.
The 4 corners of the earth, that's what I
Yeah, 4 was the earth, and 3 was, of course, the unity of heaven, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, that makes up the 7, which is everything, right? So, yeah, perfect unity. There you go. There you go. So we see 10 horns complete. All right, I'll just correct myself.
I'm going to put a question mark just so we can.
Okay, we'll make sure. We get a chance next week to quiz it. Right? 7 heads. We just talked about 7, how that relates in different ways. And 10 diadems. Does anybody know what a diadem is? We don't use that word very much, do we? That means crown. It's a crown. Oh, did you get it right? Good job. Good job. I didn't hear you. You may have to speak up a little louder. You didn't want to get caught in case you were wrong, huh? Oh, okay. I hear you. All right, so we'll find that 10 horns is referenced, and of course, the Bible is its own best explanation of itself, right? And so we need to look at another reference to help us with that. It'll be in Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7, verses 23 through 25. Through 25. And so we have here the angel Gabriel explaining the vision that was given to Daniel. Sid, could you read that for us, please?
Chapter 7, verses 23 through 25.
Uh-huh.
Thus he says for the 4th beast, there shall be a 4th kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all the kingdoms. And it shall devour the whole earth, and trample it down and break it to pieces. As for the 10 horns, out of the kingdom 10 kings shall rise, and another shall rise after them. He shall be different from the former ones, and he shall put down the 3 kings. He shall speak words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change the times of the law. And they shall be given into the hands for a time, times, and half a time.
So notice that same phrase, time, times, and half a time. Also, 3.5 years are often used in that same kind of phrasing. Okay? And so we see an explanation. What are the horns in this reference? Kings, right? They're kings. And so it's not, the horns are not literal horns. They are representative of kings. Now, if this in Revelation is written to the 7 churches of Asia, yes, ma'am. We might have to ask Clay that. What I see multiple times, and I hopefully say this right, is something around 3.5 years. It's meant to represent not a literal time, but a period of time.
Thank you, I think that's what, I wrote it down wrong.
Yeah, it's not a clearly defined passage of time, because we see in other cases that Jesus' life, for example, is covered by one part of a sentence, right? But rather it is meant to be symbolic of some amount of time passing. We're not clear on how much that time is. It's just representative of it. No, it's not infinite, right? It's not the end, right? Okay. Another verse that I'd like to look at from Daniel is Daniel chapter 8, verses 20 through 22. Daniel chapter 8, verses 20 through 22. Billy, do you have that? I'm sorry, I need to say the right Billy. Billy McWhorter. Do you have that verse? No. Okay. All right. Russ, do you have it?
Daniel 8, 20 through 22.
Uh-huh.
As for the ram that you saw with the two horns, these are the kings of Media and Persia, and the goat is the king of Greece, and the great horn between his eyes is the first king. As for the horn that was broken, in place of which 4 others arose, 4 kingdoms shall arise from his nation, but not with his power.
Okay. Now, the belief is that this is referring to Alexander the Great. Okay? And Alexander the Great came to power with 4 lieutenants, let's call them that. And he was a very young, successful ruler that conquered the known world at the time. So he was very, very powerful. But his kingdom was divided in 4 by these lieutenants. Okay? And so the explanation here matches up with history in that manner. So a lot of times when we see these things, we are given visions of kings or governments that are taking place. They give us some understanding in that level. Now, we wouldn't get that beforehand, right? You have to wait until the events are in your past before you really recognize it, right? But it does help to confirm the word of prophecy after the fact. Now, if we go back to the first part of Revelation 13, again, we see the 10 horns, 7 heads, and 10 diadems. Diadems being crowns. That sounds like kings, right? And so there is this thought that there are 10 horns or 10 kings taking place in this vision. The 7 heads are related, but I'm not exactly sure how. And I haven't seen clarity on that. But we should be thinking that this is not a literal beast, right? But rather as a vision of how history will change, the things that will happen in history. Okay? And there's also visions in here of a bear, a lion, a head that is mortally wounded but then was healed. These types of things, again, are meant to be in terms of governments or authorities that are in control for some period of time. And again, the people that this was written to, the 7 churches of Asia, would be a lot more able to realize what these visions are than we are. We go back and we begin to assign these all the way through history from the fall here of Satan until now, right? Because we know that we read in the last chapter, 12, verse 17, then the dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. We also see that Satan was thrown down in verse 9, and in verse 12, again, I'm referring to chapter 12, in verse 12, but woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. And so between the time of Christ rising from the dead and whenever the end is, the devil is in this struggle for the earth. He's wrestling with Christ and with Christians to get his revenge, to exert his wrath upon the earth before his time occurs. We live in this time, in that period. Let me see if I've got any other notes that I can share there. One thought, again, I was given some references, is that Nero is one of those beasts. Nero was Caesar. He was Caesar during a period of time in which he persecuted the Christians severely. I mean, every imaginable way of killing people, he executed through that time period. But Nero actually passed away is understood before this book was written by John. And so the belief is that the descendants or the follow-on Caesars after Nero are who this is referring to as the legacy left after Nero passed away. In fact, there were rumors at the time that Nero didn't really die. He just disappeared. And the facts are he took his own life. And so there was this idea, well, no, it's kind of like Elvis never did die kind of thing floating around all the time, right? This idea that he's really out there somewhere and we'll see him someday in the future. The same thing was done with Nero. He was such an impactful villain for the Christians that thought process is still in the minds to some degree. And one of his follow-on Caesars was, and I may pronounce this wrong, I tried a couple of different ways to try to get it right. It's Domitian. I've never heard that name before, so I may have poorly pronounced it. But he was a Caesar after Nero that persecuted Christians even more severely. And that would have been in the time of John's writing. And so he may have been the beast. May not have been. Yes, Russ?
Kind of going with what you said there, this mortal wound.
Yes.
The mortal wound, would that be Nero that you're referring to?
Yes.
And so,
They think that Domitian is a reincarnation of Nero, so to speak.
so with him being gone, it's like things would decline, but yet
They didn't.
it got worse.
They got worse. They got worse. They thought that after Nero's death, well, Christians won't be persecuted. Well, no, it came a worse time yet. Okay, and then, I'll get a little ahead of myself. Don't get ahead of yourself. We'll see, in fact, I need to stop for a minute. What else do you see, because I know Clay does this and he does a really good job with it. What else do you see in these two chapters that look familiar, or something that you can kind of attach something that we've looked at before? How about verse 5? You see something in verse 5 that we've seen before? This is verse 5 of chapter 13. Sorry. "42 months. I was looking for you to grab onto that. What is 42 months? 3.5 years. So again, we're seeing these references to periods of time that are referenced in the same similar fashion. Okay? Notice also at verse 10, here is a call for the endurance and faith of the saints. So the persistence in the face of persecution and the trials they were going through, again, is a theme, right? Part of the themes that are picked up on. What about verse 11? Do you notice anything about verse 11 that looks familiar? This is verse 11 of 13, chapter 13.
It's talking about a ram.
Pardon me?
It's talking about a ram.
A ram, yeah. And 2 horns like a lamb. Have we seen a lamb portrayed in Revelation before? Who's the lamb? Jesus, right? Jesus the slain. That was the portrayal early in Revelation. So we see one here, but what's different about this lamb?
It has 2 horns.
Well, it has 2 horns. That's not unusual for a lamb. Okay, pardon me?
He's just pretending to make good and he isn't.
I can't quite hear you, Thelma.
He's pretending to be good and isn't.
Exactly, exactly. What do we call someone who is pretending to be good but's not? You call him a hypocrite, right? A false prophet. So that's a theme that shows up in here, right? Is the dragon, devil, is trying to exert his wrath upon the world during this time, right? He's trying to destroy the saints. And he's doing that in 2 ways. The first way is the horns, right? The beast with the 10 horns and 7 heads and 10 diadems. That, we say, is representative of rulers or governments. So that Satan is using the government, the Roman government, to try to destroy the Christians. And then the second way he's trying to do it is with a false prophet, to lead people away. Right? It's a 1-2 punch that Satan does. Okay? Now, we see that here, and what the details and the references here suggest is that first you had the Roman governor that was persecuting the Christians, and then you had, charged by the Roman governor, a group of people whose job was to go particularly to Asia and to make sure that Caesar worship took place. And they could exercise that by not allowing you to buy and sell if you were a Christian. That was one of their methods. And so we had this 1-2 punch in the time of the 7 churches of Asia, in which they would be persecuted by the government, and then there was this sub-organization that was run around with a rigid religious authority. The religious authority is worship of the Caesar, and to punish anyone who did anything other than that. And Christians were the most resistant to worshiping Caesar. Even the Jews broke down at times and worshiped Caesar in order not to be persecuted here. Now, one of the ways to look at Revelation is that it meant something to the 7 churches of Asia, but it's not limited to that. That throughout this period of time, Satan would repeatedly use these kinds of methods to try to corrupt the saints and to persecute the saints. Has there been other times in which and I'm going to say this word, those who truly follow Christ. Remember, there's labels, false prophets. Have there been times in history when those who truly followed Christ were persecuted other than the first century? Absolutely. They've been, pardon me?
Pick one, pick a century.
It's almost constant, right? It's just constant. And what is Satan doing? He's using these two methods to persecute the saints. He's using the method of government. Russia, for example, completely abolished all worship in their country, okay? And then he's using a religious agency. In their case, they worship the state. And so they had a group of people that went around to make sure that there was nobody else worshiping anything other than the state. You can go through almost any period of history and find that combination, that 1-2 punch. It's repeated over and over again. Okay? At the end of chapter 13, we've got something famous. What is that?
I'm sorry, we got something.
At the end of chapter 13, the last verse, we've got something that's rather famous. The number of man, 666, right? Okay, so here's some thoughts on it. Again, there is no clear answer in our time period, okay? Those in the 7 churches of Asia, I believe, would have known what that meant. And there's a suggestion, I forgot the phrase for this, but what you do is you take the you take the alphabet that is being used, and you find the letter that's associated with it, and you use that combination, that number combination, to come up with the name. And some historians have spent time and said that Nero is 666 in the original alphabet and everything associated with it. Okay? I have no idea if that's true or not. And it's not really important. Okay? It's not important for us to exactly identify who 666 is. It's important for us to resist what the devil is trying to do to Christians before the end. Right? And we may come a time that we recognize who that is by virtue of this. I don't know if that happens or it doesn't. But it's not the most important thing. Okay? I think it was important to the 7 churches of Asia in their time, and they would have understood it easily. But I don't know if we'll live through a time where we'll understand it easily. Because, again, the devil is persistent. He is cycling again and again this methodology to go after us. Now, there was one other thought in these books. I'm sorry, yes?
Well, it tells you right there in the verse. It says with who has the understanding will know what that means.
Yes.
That means that everybody does not have that understanding.
That's correct. That's correct. And a lot of effort and time has been spent on this to try to figure out, was it Hitler, was it Nero, who it was? It doesn't really matter. It only matters if it's in our time and it's something that we need to use in order to combat evil. And if that happens, it'll be easily understood. At least that's my opinion. Now, there was one other thought on 6 that I want to throw out there. On what day of creation was man created? Day 6. The number of man. That kind of goes together for me. That man was created on the 6th day, and the number of man is 6. And the ultimate, 666, is the ultimate evil man. Okay? I can get that, I understand it, and it makes sense to me. May not make sense to you, and that's okay. All right? Who is it? I don't know.
I am of total agreement that what you're saying. That
Thank you.
I had always growing up, you're kind of oh, that's the sign of the devil. You don't even get changed in $6.66. I'm not kidding. There are people who have not given me change because of that. But isn't that just giving? We should.
It's giving him power, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you made that comment. I really appreciate that.
Okay. Good. Good. All right, we're going to go on to chapter 14 now. We've got another number in verse 1 of chapter 14. What is that number and what does it mean? We've had it before. Pardon me? Yes, 144,000 is 12, the number of tribes in Israel, times 12. 12 times 12 is 144, times the number of perfection, 1,000. Okay? And so that number has occurred multiple times. So it doesn't mean that the number of saints here is limited to 144,000. It's symbolic. It's complete. All of the saints are here with the Lamb. Okay? Verse 2 is interesting to me. Do you like to sing gospel songs? Raise your hand if you do. Those that are redeemed get to sing the song, a special song written for them by Jesus. We get to sing that song with him. Can you imagine what that meant to those that are dying and know their relatives are persecuted and dying for Christ? That had to be very, very significant to them, I think. What about verse 3? Do you recognize anything in verse 3? Have we seen that before? Early in the Revelation, we saw the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders that worshiped God. And again, that vision is repeated here. Again, signifying the power of heaven, you know, that God rewards his followers. And of course, there's confirmation again that the 144,000 are the first few fruits of God. Now, I want you to remember that phrase, first fruits, because a lot of the imagery that Jesus gave us of heaven was around growing things and having crops, okay? And we're going to see that just a little bit further on. Okay, so verse 7. What does the angel say to the world? Fear God, give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the springs of water. So one of the things that hit me when I was looking through this different review is when God makes a proclamation, it doesn't matter whether it's before or after the event, it's going to happen. It's declared. When God speaks it, it's done. Okay? And so this is not picking a particular time that it's going to happen. It's just a statement by God. This is going to happen. Yes, sir.
Verse 7, we've been taught that if it refers to God, it's to be capitalized, and this print here doesn't have the him and his capitalized in that verse. Do I see anything with that, or is it just considered a typo, or what do I do?
I don't know the answer to that, Sid.
Give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him. Who made heaven and earth there.
Sir? Yours is capitalized, so it might be the version you're looking at.
The ESV is.
And maybe they have different rules in that version. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't have a real answer for that, but it may be specific to the version. Okay? All right, we get the second angel that speaks in verse 8. What does the second angel say? Yes?
King James also says capital F.
It has it capitalized?
Yes, sir.
Okay, King James does too. Okay? Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. she who made all nations drink the wine of passion of her sexual immorality. Now, what's Babylon represent to the Jews?
To me, Rome,
It is Rome. You're a little bit ahead of me. You're absolutely right. What I was thinking about, and I was leading up to it, okay, was that Babylon was the one that took Israel and put them in captivity. That is the evil enemy that dashed babies' heads against walls. Okay? Just as evil as you can imagine. What is the evil in the time of the seven churches? Rome. Okay? So this is a declaration. Again, when God speaks it, it's just like it happened in the past. Whether it's in the future or the past, it's going to happen. It's done. Okay? And he's saying they are now being judged. The third angel says something different than the other two. It says, if anyone worships the beast and its image and receives a mark on his forehead or on his hand, he will also drink the wine of God's wrath, poured full strength into the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels, in the presence of the Lamb. And so, I've got 5 minutes left, so I'm trying to watch the clock here close. So, if you give in to these things that Satan is doing to the world during this time, right? If you give in to the government pressure and persecution, if you give in to the false prophets and their religion that they try to persuade you is better than Christ, better than what Christ brought to us, if you give in to them, you will be judged harshly. We have to hold on to our faith through this time.
Okay, go back to the mark of the 666.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow you, Alan.
I said, doesn't that go back to the mark of the 666?
Yeah, you could only have that mark to buy and sell. Absolutely, absolutely. And that's part of the control that the government or the religious authority can exercise over us at some point. Verse 12 and 13, here's the call for the endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. Write this, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Blessed indeed, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds follow them. Who said, come unto me, and I will give you rest? Jesus. This is a repeat of that, right? It's a confirmation. If you die in the Lord, you get the rest you deserve. You get the comfort that you deserve. And again, that, if you think about that in terms of those being persecuted in the seven churches of Asia, boy, I sure hope so, because dying for nothing would be a waste, right? My loved one just died for Christ. I have to believe that that meant something, right? That will have a lasting meaning. Okay, the last one I want to touch on here is verse 15. And in this case, this angel is talking to one like the Son of Man being Jesus, a reference like that, right? Put in your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap has come, for the harvest of the earth is fully ripe. Okay? Now I want us to look at another verse. Again, the Bible explains itself. Let's look at Matthew chapter 13, verses 24 through 30. Matthew chapter 13, verses 24 through 30. Jesus told this in a parable. He put another parable before them, saying, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while his men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, Then the weeds appeared also. And the servants of the master of the house came and said to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have weeds? He said to them, An enemy has done this. So the servants said to him, Then do you want us to go and gather them? But he said, No, lest in gathering the weeds you root up the wheat along with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And at the harvest time I will tell the reapers, Gather the weeds first, and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn. Now, if we go back and look at the imagery we were just talking about in Revelation, put in your sickle and reap. Does that sound familiar? What is he reaping? The harvest of the earth. Christians. If we go to verse 17, again, a different angel is called to use his sickle. Put in your sickle and gather the clusters from the vine of the earth, for its grapes are ripe. So the angel swung his sickle across the earth and gathered the grape harvest of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. That's like the weeds that we had in the parable, isn't it? So the Bible has explained itself in saying that a great harvest is coming for the earth. That harvest will have the Christians taken care of and brought to God as a desired harvest of the earth, and the wicked as the weeds that will be punished for their deeds. Any questions?
So the grape harvest is the Christians?
Pardon me? The grapes are the evil, the weeds in this, because they're the ones that are crushed. And they use that imagery because just after it, it talks about the blood being a river extended from it. So it's a bit gross, but it's illustrating that all that fall to Satan will be gathered and crushed.
And are we able to do anything with the 1600 at the end of that chapter?
I didn't find anything on the 1600. It was meant, I'm sorry, it's longer in distance. I forgot the conversion right now. It's longer in distance than any river on earth. I do know that much. And so and when you say a bridle's height, it's 4 foot off the ground or something, right? And so it's meant to imply huge numbers. Not anything specific, but just huge, huge numbers. Robbie?
At the bottom of the ESV, it says about 184 miles.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right. Alan, do we have refreshments downstairs? We do. So we've got a few refreshments before our worship service. Thank you.